Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trading Capital's live stream. All right, so we're just watching the markets here. Overall, the equity markets have been under pressure today. Qs have been trying to hold positive, but small caps have been under a lot of pressure. S&P 500 stocks have been under pressure. There's still some strength being observed in the semiconductor space, so you have to obviously watch that. Right now, we are seeing the Qs potentially putting in a little bit of head and shoulders pattern. You're forming this left shoulder, head, right shoulder potential. If you trigger this little neckline intraday, it could be in for quite a decent sized drop on the market session. Obviously, you have major headwinds today for the markets, why small caps are actually under a lot of pressure today. You have yields ripping, 10-year up 2.8, 30-year up 2.6. My members know I've been bullish on yields. You also have the fact that the dollar is ripping today. Dollar is actually above 105 intraday, trading at 104.98 at the moment. So definitely some sizable moves in the yield market and the dollar market. I do expect that's going to put pressure on the overall NASDAQ and S&P throughout the rest of the session. There's about 2 hours left on this trading session. You also have oil tapping almost that $84 target. It has reversed a little bit off of the highs, but it's still holding positive gains, up 0.88%. And then simultaneously, you also have nat gas trying to break out. Sorry about that, guys. Just letting my dog out. So at the moment, QQQ just slightly negative, SPY slightly negative, down by 0.29%, and the Russell's down by 0.86%. You also have accumulation in the VIX being observed, so UVXY showing some signs of life. So definitely pay close attention to that. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful long weekend. Good to be back in the market session here, in the swing of things. I'm kind of liking a 444 0DT put on the Qs. I am liking that trade at the moment. Bitcoin also sold off. You have Microsoft potentially breaking down out of a 5-minute bear flag. Google still remaining strong. Apple, Tesla trying to curl up. NVIDIA has been putting in some bearish consolidation pretty much all day. So NVIDIA is showing some signs of bearish consolidation. Microsoft, again, you're seeing this potential 5-minute bear flag about to fall. Just 1 second, I'm getting a call, guys. Sorry about that, guys. Mic check, mic check. Thank you. Thanks, Bart. Yeah, so I do like 444 puts on the Qs, 0 DTE. I think that this is a tough resistance level. We have been putting in lower highs all day, and the markets did get faded. You do have that strong dollar, strong VIX, strong yields, strong oil, strong nat gas. So pretty much everything supporting lower price in the markets is at favor, but as of now, Qs are trying to catch a bid. You are seeing Apple down 0.8, NVIDIA down half, Microsoft up half, AMD, SMCI, AVGO still showing some life into the Qs and the semis. Again, small caps are definitely lagging the market. Micron's positive again. Amazon's slightly negative at the moment. Big move up in nat gas though. So nat gas bulls definitely showing a sizable move here. Showing a very sizable move. Let's see if the Qs want to break down or push up to the top of this channel. We are seeing oil weaken a bit, which is kind of helping the Qs at the moment. And again, semis are still showing some strength, even though the broad market is struggling today. But I think nat gas is an interesting play here as we move forward. This could be marking the low in nat gas. I'm very curious to see how this price action unfolds in nat gas. Are we going to press higher off of this nice daily chart reversal pattern? What would look to be a potential daily chart breakout. You're now trying to get a close above the daily 50 MA, which is quite impressive, I might add. I do think that's quite impressive on nat gas. Again, my members know I've been bullish on yields, and I think that this could be starting something significant in the yield market. Most market participants have been pricing in cuts, but what have we've been preaching here? We've been preaching that inflation is coming back and likely going to rear its ugly head. And now you're seeing yields moving up sharply today. You're seeing the dollar moving up sharply, and you still have oil trying to press higher. Based off of oil's daily chart breakout today, you're looking at potentially a $90 barrel price on oil. And what is that going to do to inflation? And then we just saw nat gas today potentially putting in a little bit of a bullish reversal. If nat gas also starts to get going, what's that going to do to the overall energy CPI? It's only going to press it higher from my point of view. Again, take everything that I say with a grain of salt because obviously I can be wrong. Markets can move irrationally and stay buoyant. They can go and diverge beyond most people's expectations. So never truly believe everything I'm saying. You always have to question everything and seek other opinions. Seek other opinions because that's how you're going to keep an edge in the market and stay a little bit sharper. QQQ trying to press and break out of this little range. Struggling at the moment. Qs are actually positive. S&P still negative. Russell still negative. All right, guys, I just took a 444 put on the Qs. I got filled at 40 cents a con. 40 cents a con. 40 cents a con. Very small position. Just seeing if we're going to get a move back down to 444. So 0 DTE put on the Qs. 0 DTE put on the Qs. Come on. Break us down. Chop us down. Trying to hold support here. Google still remaining resilient. Tesla still trying to press higher. Amazon still holding up. Bitcoin again getting hit today. Bitcoin's currently trading under its previous all-time high. So not a good sign for crypto and Bitcoin at the moment. You have MSTR down quite sharply today. A lot of the crypto stocks are getting hit pretty hard, so nice to be short MSTR with members. We're up nicely, a nice double-digit gain so far on MSTR. Good to see. And a big question is, are we going to see communication stocks give up any of these gains today? That could really push the market over the edge. Google's just been a monster, holding pretty much in a tight range all day long. Hasn't really given up anything. Qs are softening just a touch. NVIDIA's weakening just a touch. You have AMD still up a couple percent. Tesla down 1.87. Again, guys, just be mindful. We do have a potential head and shoulders trying to carve out a right shoulder here. Trying to carve out a right shoulder. And again, if that plays out, you have a move down to 441. Whether or not that plays out today or tomorrow or the next day, there's still a potential. That would be a monster flush. If that were to play out today, that would send the S&P down over 1%, most likely. Qs would be down roughly about 0.5% on the session. Russell would be down over 1% on the session. And I mean, we really haven't had a big down day in the QQQ for quite a long time. You know, we haven't had a plus 1 or 2% down day in the market for quite a long time. And perhaps we're on the near-term cusp of seeing that. But what a massive breakout for the dollar today. What a massive breakout for the dollar. What a massive breakout for nat gas today. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. CGC had quite the pullback at the 3.8 fib, thinking it might be a nice short-term buy if it hits $7. Okay, so Canopy Growth. Paul's looking at Canopy Growth. Just give me a second, guys. Let's look at CGC. So these stocks have to be very careful because they often overshoot in both directions. They do overshoot in both directions. So right now, obviously, you are trying to test and hold this little breakout trend line going all the way back to 2023 pivot to your 2023 pivot there. So you are trying to hold this breakout. But again, these names typically overshoot both directions. So I see what you're looking at. Let me just erase this fib. Let me just erase some of these trend lines. So you're probably looking at, if you throw in a fib retrace from the low to the high, yeah, so you're looking at right at that 382 fib. And I mean, there is some decent support here. You have this previous little consolidation zone. Let's see if there's any other moving averages. Not the 50, not the 20. You're hitting the 7-day moving average right now. You know, I mean, it's aggressive to buy here. You probably could get a bounce since there is momentum in marijuana stocks. You probably could get a bounce. So this scenario now where we have, you know, a little bit of support in an individual name. You are hitting a 382. You are hitting the 7-day. You're retracing potentially to this breakout trend line. So, I mean, there are a couple factors here, but when I'm undecided and unsure about this trade, I like to look at some of the ETFs. So let's look at MSOS and then we'll look at MJ. So MSOS actually looking pretty structurally bullish. So when you look at this chart, it's currently trading above its 7-day and it's holding in a very tight pattern here. So that's telling me that there's underlying momentum still continuing to buy the sector. And you can see this bigger weekly inverse head and shoulders on MSOS. So there's a big trend line that we're trying to break out of right now. Big trend line. And I mean, you get a breakout out of this range, we're going to about 17, 18 bucks on the charts. So you can see there is a lot of power potentially coiling in these patterns. I would just be cautious with canopy, maybe a little bit lower. If we look at MJ, very similar chart pattern as well. You can actually see this one's broken out of a little basing formation, pivot to pivot to pivot. You've broken out. You got that weekly confirmed break, but it needs a little more consolidation. It needs a little bit more consolidation, in my opinion. You know, the fact that small caps are weak in this particular sector, still holding the majority of its gains, is quite impressive at the moment. Certainly impressive. But I would probably be more inclined to at least wait for this gap fill. That's kind of your line for the bulls. Your previous little this liquidity gap zone, you really want to hold above that. You really want to hold above that. So I think that if you get a pierce of $7, yeah, you could probably look for an entry. All right, so QQQ did briefly dip there to that 444 zone. You're welcome, Paul. You're welcome. Yeah, marijuana stocks are tricky, guys. Marijuana stocks are tricky. I know everyone likes to catch momentum, and then obviously you had some positive press come out of Germany today regarding the marijuana stocks. So I think you're in a process to slowly start hearing more and more legalization being chattered about. And obviously everyone's waiting for the states, the federal legalization to occur in the states. All right, guys, QQQ 444s are working nicely. They are working out nicely at the moment. And again, we are on watch for a big head and shoulders on the Qs. There is one forming. There is a potential forming. Microsoft curling down a bit. Qs are still hanging steady. Google starting to weaken just a touch. So the Qs are trying to get a little bit of a push up here. QQQ is trying to catch a small bid. Dollar's trying to curl. I am seeing Meta curling down. Amazon trying to curl up. Microsoft trying to curl up. Tesla trying to push up, NVDA trying to push up. Still a bearish pattern in the overall NVIDIA chart, shaping up. Bullish pattern on Google. Nat gas still trying to press higher. Bitcoin's trying to get above 69K. Again, as long as Bitcoin stays below 69, that's slightly more bearish because that's your previous all-time high price. So you run the risk of seeing a little bit more of a flush in Bitcoin as long as you stay below 69.33. Qs are trying to push up here. Still struggling at that EMA 113. Very tight range on Google. NVIDIA trying to curl up. Meta's still struggling. Qs are actually green on the session. Paul asking, any thoughts as to the possibility of Bitcoin being at the bottom of a bull flag starting on March 25th? Just give me a second here. Yeah, I see the flag you're looking at. Just give me 1 second while I pull up the chart here. I do see the flag you're looking at. So you're probably just looking at this flag pattern that we're starting. Yeah, there's a potential for sure. There is a potential. But again, you know, you've had Bitcoin running recently when the Dixie was soft and yields were soft and the VIX was soft. So, I mean, the only fundamental change is that it's now having a Dixie that's breaking out, and that Dixie's above 104. So when you look, or even testing 105. So, I mean, you look at where we are on the Dixie's at its highest point really since February of this year. So if we look where Bitcoin was trading when the Dixie was at its highest point in February, what was the exact date? February 13th. So February 13th is all the way down here around 50K, 51,000. So this was the highest point in the dollar, and the dollar's actually broken out. So I mean, I think it's a little bit still extended just where rates are today, where the Dixie is. So I'm finding a little bit more hard pressed to think that we are going to fall. But obviously, anything can happen. You can see the Qs are trying to break out here and push this market a little bit higher. Strength being observed in Microsoft, Apple, Google. A little bit of rejection there. We are hitting a pretty powerful wedge pattern on the chart. You can see if you drop this little trend line all the way through, you're hitting multi-pivot resistance, which is why we keep rejecting off this zone. And you just saw a pretty harsh rejection there. Did just see a pretty harsh rejection there. So again, I'm just looking at February here when the Dixie was trading this high and Bitcoin was all the way down here. This is your February 14th candle. So, I mean, I do see a potential flag structure starting, but I'm feeling a little bit doubtful on Bitcoin breaking up through this flag pattern. I still think you could be at a major, double top almost. You still really haven't convincingly closed the week above that previous all-time high pivot. So a lot of distribution signs. So again, just where the dollar's trading in comparison to where Bitcoin's trading right now, in my analysis, it would suggest a pullback. What would negate this flag pattern? Let me just quickly pull it up again. Well, I mean, obviously, if you break out to the upside, it could trigger it. So, I mean, you obviously have to respect if it breaks out. But I think what would negate it, Qs are getting a pretty big push there. Qs are getting a really big push. NVDA is surging here. Look at that NVDA pump. Wow, look at the pump on NVIDIA coming into the picture. QQQ, again, lifting this market. 10-minute chart resistance is at your EMA, but you could push all the way up to that high end of the channel. We'll see if we want to break out above this area. The volume is starting to come in, so it is showing some signs of strength at the moment. But what would negate this potential flag pattern? If you got a close... really what you don't want to see if you're bullish is a close below this impulse green candle, this little breakout. So your low pivot is around 66, but really you don't want to lose this little 67.23 level. That's kind of the bulls want to hold. You really want to hold this 67,000 level. But again, look at this type of flag pattern, right? You're putting in a bull flag potential, but you're losing that short-term 7-day moving average. So I never really like that. When you start losing that yellow trend line at the 7-day, that's showing a bit of weakness creeping in. And it makes sense, right? You have the Dixie ripping, yields ripping. Bitcoin's had a stellar run, and I think now it's going to move over for some potential strength in the dollar market. But really 67K is kind of the line in the sand. And then I would encourage you to really just monitor this previous pivot from 2021. Mark that on your chart, however you want to use it. If it's a special trend line, mark it on your chart. Because it's an important area. As long as Bitcoin remains below that, then you technically have a double top in place. And you could see some downside. All right, so they ramped the Qs up there. Qs are now at 0.09%. Dixie's still strong on the session. Qs are still trying to build off of this momentum and push up. Microsoft trying to move up off the lows. Meta still pushing. Tesla's still trying to push. Microsoft still trying to push here. I just added a few more cons to that QQQ 444 put. I'll add a couple more at this 444.70 zone. So I picked some up at 26 cents a con. My average is now sitting at 33 cents a con. Gas still trying to press. Oil's actually weakening, which is I think why the Qs are actually trying to push up here. All right, we are seeing the Dixie trying to make another little move higher. Qs are currently positive on the session. Qs are currently positive when the broad market is weak. S&P, Russell are lagging. Microsoft finding some rejection at that EMA 113. NVDA, same moving average on the 3-minute chart, finding some rejection. Some of the highest volume stocks today: Mara, Tesla, Palantir, Apple, CCL, AMD, NEO. Some of the marijuana stocks: Canopy, Rivian's positive. New York Community Bank seeing an increase in shares. Again, today, you're seeing regionals down 1.85% on the KRE. Not a healthy sign. Not a healthy sign for the regionals. I think it's pretty evident to say that probably a lot of the liquidity that's flowing out of the regionals and real estate based sectors is you're seeing it move back into the semis. So SOXX trying to get above that ever so important neckline. As of now, you can see it's had a nice little impulse breakout candle above that head and shoulders neckline. So now it remains actually more bullish. And you can see that semiconductors are trying to make a run here. They're trying to actually break out of a little inverse head and shoulders. So, you break out above this little neckline zone, and that points to semi's new highs on the SOXX, which is pretty amazing to me. Obviously, it hasn't broken out, but that's a target that we have to be aware of. As of now, you're currently just trading underneath that little bullish neckline, and you're trading above the bearish neckline. Bitcoin trying to make a move up. Qs again trying to make a move as well. You can see Microsoft trying to break this little bit of a basing formation, intraday basing formation. NVIDIA is trying to consolidate to press higher. All right, a little bit more of a breakdown coming in the Qs, looking to retest this little breakout trend line. So right now we're above this downsloping trend line, but you keep finding some sellers in that region. And you can see Microsoft looking a little heavier here. Qs are still technically just trying to put in some consolidation on the short-term chart, but again, I still think that we could be looking to make another leg lower today. That would not surprise me. Netflix up 0.8. Energy stock still showing some signs of life. Again, nat gas up 6.77. Bitcoin down 3.5. The UVXY up 2.6. Gold slightly green. Silver slightly negative. 10-year yield up 2.8%. Dixie trying to make a pop. It's back above 105. So you do have the Dixie trying to make a pop higher here. Look at that nice little pop. Very strong dollar today. AMC down 12. Eli Lilly's down 2.5. XOM still holding up 0.7%. Adobe getting hit a little bit today, down 0.8%. SMH still strong. SOX still strong. Jets are down 0.5% today. Again, only strength in XLC, XLE, and XLK. And as of now, that's still enough to keep the Qs in positive territory. Question is, can the Qs remain in positive territory? Google has been the bright spot in the communication sector, up 2.75%. JP Morgan's even negative today, down 0.74. Copper stocks showing some signs of life. Lithium stocks under pressure today. Nice job, Tom. Tom said he shorted the Dow Jones Transports last Thursday. Easy money. Hey, nothing's easy money, Tom. You had to be aware of that trade. You had to push the sell button. It's never easy money, even though it seems like it is. Some trades, work out very quickly. We just got to stay humble. But nice job. Nice job. You know, the market never gives us anything easy. It's just whether or not we're in the right place. Are we listening? Are we paying attention to the signs? And you were. Steel stocks are actually showing some relative strength. Starbucks down today. Qs are just stuck in a range right now. They're just being pinned in this 444 range. I'm trying to flag and build a pattern to move higher. I am seeing Tesla trying to push, Microsoft trying to develop a flag, Google's trying to push higher, Meta's trying to push higher, Amazon's trying to push. NVDA also just flagging here. You also have the dollar flagging. So here we have the QQQ trying to pop higher along with the dollar. Very interesting. You have NVIDIA trying to break out of a little flag pattern that's helping the Qs. You have Tesla pushing. So Trump Media announced a cash crunch. Is that what you're saying, Briston? So a huge pump on NVIDIA. That's why the Qs are trying to break this range. Qs are trying to break this range. So definitely a big pump coming into NVIDIA. NVIDIA is still trying to push here. So massive move up in NVIDIA. They are trying to take it back to the positive side here, and they have done so. They have taken NVIDIA back to the positive side. So let's see if it can remain positive. Obviously, the semis have been strong today, and they are trying to push it. So a little bit of rejection there coming into the Qs, just some minor rejection. So now this is a big spot for the Qs. You can see that we're struggling at this same little resistance trend line that goes really all the way back to this pivot high on the 10-minute chart. Hard to see, but it's there. It's there, and that's what you tried breaking out of. And now you're seeing sellers come back into the picture. So NVDA trying to bounce and keep pressing, and it's trying to lift the Qs. It's trying to hold at this EMA 113. I think since we've broken above it here, doing a retest, a back test, if we lose this area, you probably will have a hard move down to about 433.57. If you remain above this area, then you could push back up to about 440, 470. NVIDIA is still trying to put in a flag to move higher. Microsoft, Apple bouncing. Google curling down now. So Google's showing a little bit of weakness at the moment, some profit taking. You always want to pay close attention to those relative strength names that have been pretty much strong all day, because if they start to break down, that could put additional sell side pressure in the market. Bart is saying till now Apple's in a whole month in a downtrend. Yep, Apple's trading in a bear market, right? You know, the old saying, so goes Apple, so goes the market. Well, it hasn't really been true, but perhaps, you know, Apple's just been getting a lot of its selling out of the way before the Qs go lower. But Apple's definitely been in a downtrend. Not a strong chart. Not a strong chart. I mean, if Apple's hanging on right now by a thread, if you break 169, bad things could happen to Apple. What do you think? When good level for longs? Are you talking about Apple specifically, Bart? Put the ticker in. I'll take a look at whatever ticker you want me to look at. So you're looking at Apple long. Let's take a look at Apple. I think Apple's just more intraday day trading right now. You know, I wouldn't really look to Apple in terms of a swing trade yet. I don't think it's at the level, but day trading, you know, scalping long calls in the morning have been pretty lucrative. You know, there have been some day tradable bounces yet. But in terms of, you know, again, if Apple breaks this bear consolidation range, you've triggered a nasty head and shoulders on the daily chart of Apple, right? I like Apple in these 160s area, mid 160s for a potential bounce. But again, Just recognize, though, you've been putting in lower highs, lower lows, and you break this neckline, it does suggest a pretty gnarly move on Apple. Now, is there going to be day tradable bounces? But just recognize, you break this trend line, you could have a move down to Apple around 137, 140. So just understand that Apple's still looking weak. Obviously, it's a household name. You know, you're going to have a ton of support here on this weekly EMA 113, currently sitting at 164.81. That's probably a buyable bounce level. You can also see that Apple has this little trend line. Notice this parallel channel on Apple, where you had your pivot high, pivot high, pivot high. This is your breakout zone. If you retest this 155 area, you know, it is a downsloping support level, so I think in and around there you also get a bounce. But that's an important channel for Apple because you had a big consolidation pattern, 3 high pivots, 3 low pivots. So pay close attention to that channel in and around this 155, 154 zone. You know, in terms of a day trade, could you try to bottom pick Apple here? Probably, but I wouldn't. Yep, I do think it's possible. I think it's very possible. Especially if the markets go through some sort of a correction. You know, you think about how Apple's performed. Apple's been performing like dog shit in a strong market. We're not just talking about a crappy company, right? This company makes cash hand over fist, but obviously it's not growing at the same rate as it once was. And there's been antitrust lawsuits and so on and so forth. And really, it doesn't look like the market is taking their Vision Pro as well as I think some investors expect at the moment. But if the market goes through a little bit of a correction, then you could see Apple even underperform even more. Right? So just because a stock is oversold doesn't guarantee it having a bounce. Obviously, since it's a mega cap and it's a blue chip and it's the second biggest company, it makes it more likely that it has a bounce in oversold conditions. But it's never a guarantee. Never a guarantee. All right, QQQ just grinding higher here. It's lifting the S&P. It is lifting the... Nope, the Russell's actually not really participating at the moment. It's down about 0.9%. Nat gas continuing to climb. Still up about 6. It's nice to see nat gas holding the majority of its gains. You know, you look at nat gas closing above the 50-day moving average, or at least trying to do so. You look at oil. Oil had a big rally all the way up to about 84 a barrel, just missing it. And now it's pulled back to 83.38. So it's given up a fair size of its gains today, and nat gas is holding. So it's a nice little sign for nat gas, this fact that it is holding the lion's share of its gains. All right, some market weakness coming into the Qs. A little bit of a sell-off there. A little bit of a sell-off. The weakness is coming through a little bit of NVIDIA, a little bit of Microsoft. Google, again, trying to lose 155. Meta curling down a touch. QQQ getting bid right back up. Bitcoin trying to retest 69K, so you are seeing some strength coming back into the Bitcoin chart. kind of impressive at the moment. Microsoft trying to break out here. It is trying to get the Qs to push for its next little level. So you are seeing some strength coming back into the Qs and mega cap tech once again. Capital rotating back into the Qs. Qs are showing the most relative strength today. In fact, they're actually showing the only relative strength in terms of the broad market. Will they close the Qs positive and then the S&P and Russell negative? Or will they close all three indices negative? Qs are up by 50 cents on the session. S&P is down by 98 cents. Russell's down by $1.89, which is about a 0.9% drop. Oil strong, nat gas strong, yield strong, VIX strong. All right, you have Microsoft trying to get a little breakout here. Is NVIDIA following suit? It appears likely that it's trying. Again, Bitcoin making another move higher. Crypto stocks are also trying to make a little move higher. AMD getting above its 50-day moving average for now. A little bit of rejection there in the Qs. Rejection in Microsoft at the moment. Meta, Google, Amazon all trying to push up. Same thing with Microsoft. NVIDIA just temporarily lagging at the moment. NVIDIA is still slightly down. Apple negative, NVIDIA negative, Tesla negative. You have AMD green, Microsoft green, Google green, Amazon green, Meta green. Pretty big down candle there on the Qs, and that was primarily because of NVIDIA. Now you have Meta curling down, Amazon also curling down, Microsoft still trying to curl up. Apple's been trying to flag sideways here on the 5-minute chart and break out, but it hasn't been able to do so just quite yet. Still a little bit of struggle in this range. Potential little failed breakout on Microsoft. What does that mean? If Microsoft fails this little breakout, it should retest down here around 422.50. So it's had 2 attempts at breaking out here, Microsoft, and it's failed on both. So it should fall back to its level of support, its breakout zone, which is down here. Amazon, a pretty hard reversal on Amazon and Meta. I am observing a hard reversal in Amazon and Meta. Still trying to hold NVIDIA here. Still currently just down ever so slightly. Coinbase down 5.3, Mara down 4, MicroStrategy down 4.7. SMCI is holding strong at the moment. So still some strength in SMCI being observed. A little bit more selling coming into the Qs. It's now 3 o'clock. You have Microsoft trying to recapture this little neckline again. A little more selling coming into the Qs, guys. A little bit more selling. Again, we're riding 444 put, 0 DTE. My average con is sitting at 33 cents, so we're in the money now. Cons are sitting at 38 cents right now. Looking for more downside. Let's see how much of a flush we can do now. Again, just keep in mind there's still a potential bearish pattern on the Qs unfolding. Let's look at the 5-minute chart here. You can still see a potential head and shoulders, left shoulder, head, right shoulder. If you break this neckline, you will see a pretty hard sell on the Qs. So your neckline is right here. Actually just going to erase some of these other trend lines since they're kind of muted. Qs are retesting this 444 zone. Let's see how much strength there is here. Microsoft big wick back up. I'm seeing the SOXS. So semiconductors are actually trying to weaken across the board. Seeing some strength coming back into the SOXS. It is trying to push up. So we may see a little bit more weakness creep into the Qs late in the session here. We are into the final hour of trading. So keep that in mind. This is typically where bigger movements start to happen. Qs are up by 16 cents, 0.03%. S&P negative, Russell negative. VIX dollar yields all surging, oil surging, nat gas surging. This market has every rhyme or reason to go negative across the QQQ market, but trying to hold steady. They are trying to hold steady. Big bump up in Microsoft here. Look at Microsoft. So where's this selling coming from in the Qs? If they're not going down and Microsoft's pushing, sell side pressure. I'm not really seeing Google coming in a little bit. NVDA seeing some sell side, but Microsoft trying to push higher here. So there's some optimism creeping back into the largest company in the world. And it is still at 0.6%. So difficult for the Qs to go negative if Microsoft is holding positive. So let's see if Microsoft can give up any sort of gains here. Come on, flush the Qs over that 444 level. Tesla's actually making a nice bullish break up. So Tesla's trying to get above its pivot. Harder selling coming into Google and Meta. So maybe a little bit of rotation out of communication right now. Late in the session, you could be seeing it push back into Microsoft. All right, Qs are trying to catch another bid here. Microsoft's leading the charge. Wow, big surge in Microsoft. It's lifting up pretty much everything in the Qs at the moment. Lifting up everything in the Qs at the moment. What a surge in Microsoft there. Wow. Nice little push in Microsoft. Still continuing. NVIDIA is still lagging a little bit here despite the semis are strong. Microsoft still pressing. NVIDIA struggling though. Now you have NVIDIA trying to firm up. Microsoft's still going here late into the close. Getting a really big push up in Microsoft. NVIDIA is now performing. So, I mean, this is where the Qs can really start to gain some momentum. They are keeping it positive on the session. It's now up 0.12. S&P still down 0.17. Heavy volume in NVIDIA coming in. They're still trying to press the Qs higher. QQQ absolutely ripping right now. Back to the highs here. So every little dip just keeps getting bought and they keep pushing up. And again, one of the reasons actually the Qs ripped there is the dollar weakened over the last few minutes. So the Dixie weakened, Apple broke out of a little bit of a range pattern. Tesla's trying to break out of its little bit of a range pattern. Doing so successfully at this point. NVIDIA back to the green side. So you did just tap that major resistance at that 444.70 zone. 444.70 zone is a pretty big resistance point. can see this channel that we've just been chopping in for quite a long time now. Had bearish consolidation, you broke out of it. Had a really big ramp up here today. Then you went back all the way down to the low of the channel. Now you're back to the high of the channel. So impressive resistance and support zones to trade against. But realistically, we haven't gone much. You know, trader's paradise, investor's nightmare. We really haven't gone and broken out convincingly yet. Just at resistance. So here you had the Qs make a higher high. You had Microsoft potentially make a little bit of a higher high from its bearish trend. NVDA did not make a higher high. So again, you're still seeing some distribution in NVIDIA, despite these semis are actually strong today. So that's kind of interesting. Definitely interesting. Qs are still green. VIX green, yields green, oil, energy green. Tesla down 1.22, but it has firmed up. Microsoft still at 0.6. Qs are up 0.11, holding positive gains, while the S&P and Russell are negative. All right, so Microsoft coming in a little bit. NVIDIA is trying to firm up. Bitcoin back above 69K, trying to get above its previous all-time high price. Apple, Tesla still pushing. Google, Meta still trying to curl up. Amazon seeing a little bit of selling. Tesla's ripping right now. So Tesla's doing a lot of heavy lifting. NVIDIA also trying to establish a flag pattern and break higher here. So NVIDIA is looking a little bit more constructive at this point. Still the majority of sectors red except for communications, energy, and XLK. So, you know, between XLK and communications, they are the heaviest weighted sectors, which is why you're still seeing the Qs holding some positivity today. NVIDIA coming in just a touch. Apple seeing some heavy selling now. Same thing with Meta and Google. So Qs are coming down just a touch here. Again, are we all going to see the Qs hold their positive gains into the market close? Final 48 minutes of trading. It's currently. Again, Apple tried breaking out of its bear range. It got rejected. It could trade down to 169.78, which is about another 20 cents lower. 22 cents lower. Google coming in right now. Meta coming in just a touch. Amazon trying to press higher. NVIDIA coming in. Q still holding above that EMA 113, just like Microsoft is. You know, the nicer weather's rolling around when the boats are coming out. You can hear the boats on the water. More selling coming into Google. Bitcoin back above that previous 69K all-time high price. So Bitcoin's trying to firm up and hold steady. You have Apple coming in still. Microsoft trying to hold above its little breakout zone. Oil's trying to press back up. Dixie's seeing a little bit of weakness here. The Russell 2000 trying to firm up just a touch. Let's see if NVIDIA breaks this little neckline. It's coming up into this zone as we speak. Tesla's still pushing. NVIDIA coming in a little bit. Amazon curling up. Meta trying to curl back up. Google still holding above 155. Microsoft still trying to hold its breakout. Net Qs are still pushing. Qs are still pushing here. Nice move coming back into Bitcoin. It's back above 69K. Microsoft still just consolidating, trying to push back up. NVDA as well, trying to push back up. Dixie's coming in. It's back below 105 right now. So it's at 104.98. So NVIDIA again coming back down to this little neckline. Let's see if we get a rejection and break of this intraday head and shoulders. If you trigger this little mini head and shoulders, it takes you back below 900, back to this consolidation range, roughly at 897. Microsoft coming in pretty sharply there. Again, NVIDIA now breaching that little neckline, but finding some support on that EMA. So what's interesting is the neckline is just right above that EMA. So you can see NVIDIA's hitting its 1 minute EMA, so are the Qs at 113. Same thing with Microsoft. So I mean, right now it's coming down to Microsoft and NVIDIA. If they hold, the Qs will hold. But if they start to weaken here, these two stocks sitting right on those EMAs, just like the Qs. So definitely a little bit of a inflection point. You can see NVIDIA seeing a lot of buying strength coming into that picture. So big wick off of that zone on NVIDIA, massive wick. Google coming in just a touch. Amazon coming in just a touch. Meta coming in just a touch. But Microsoft and NVIDIA holding steady. They are pushing the Qs back up, trying to hold it positive. Again, S&P still down 0.2%. Russell down 0.86%. And Qs are just chugging along here. Ten-year yield up 2.92%. Monster move in the 10-year. That is still a monster move. I'm actually quite shocked the Qs are holding up as well as they are, especially with the weakness in the Russell, VIX. But again, you're still seeing the monster strength coming back into mega cap tech land. So no head and shoulders on NVIDIA. No head and shoulders on NVIDIA. I repeat, the neckline was saved. You're actually trying to create this wedge pattern now. One could argue it is a bullish wedge pattern forming. Microsoft trying to firm up. Tesla's now softening. It hit the 5-minute EMA 113, which was sitting at around 173.93. Pulled back by about 20 cents or so. Google pushed right back up. Final 38 minutes of trading. 38 minutes of trading. Let's see if there's going to be any unwinding late in the session. Typically, when most sectors are weak, there's a high likelihood of a late flush. They grind things higher, slowly, chopping in a range, and then they take all that liquidity that they accumulated on the little grind higher and they drop it lower. So you typically do see that type of price action. So just be careful about a late day flush in the market, specifically when yields have made an outsized move, a rather large daily chart move. You also have the VIX making a decent move, dollar making a rather outsized move. So whenever you start seeing those huge reversals in some of those yields and dollar markets, don't be surprised if you see a big move late into the equity session. All right, NVIDIA coming right back down, testing this little head and shoulders again. And it does appear like they want to break it. We'll see. Still holding that EMA. Still holding it on Microsoft as well. And the Qs are also holding. Bitcoin ripping here up to now 69.5. Still down 2.5%, but it has firmed up quite nicely on the session. NVIDIA slightly negative, Apple down. Microsoft still at 0.6%. Look at them. They just don't want to break this QQQ market down. They are throwing everything at NVIDIA and Microsoft to keep it above these EMAs. They are pinning Microsoft and NVIDIA at these EMAs for now. Let's see if they can hold it. Dollar's coming down just a touch. Meta trying to get another bid higher. Google's trying to lose 155. Apple's still trading below 170. Amazon seeing a little bit of sellers. NVIDIA's hanging on by a thread here at the low end of its range. Still holding technical support though. Apple trying to bounce here. Here goes Microsoft trying to get below that EMA. Qs are still just holding steady. And there goes NVIDIA breaking down slightly. So NVIDIA has triggered a little head and shoulders, bearish price action. So we're definitely observing some weakness in NVIDIA. You're hitting the 900 whole level psychological number as support. You can see the Qs just still holding that EMA. Still just holding. We're trying to breach it now. Paul saying, so the MJ sector is looking fairly bullish to you at the moment? Yeah, it is. It is. The only thing that we have to be cautious with the MJ sector is that it's a momentum-based sector, and just keep in mind that the companies are actually dog shit at the moment. They're burning through hordes of cash. So it's just pure momentum, right? So typically when a sector is just all momentum based, driven by news headlines and market chatter, senators, congressmen and women potentially legalizing cannabis, as fast as the air can come into it, it can also come right out of it. So, I mean, when you look at the sector, you'd rather, I think the bigger move in the short term has occurred. Now you just let it digest and see what type of patterns we form. You know, we caught the MJ, we caught canopy growth for a lovely gain. Do I wish I held it longer? Absolutely, but just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. You know, we still made money on it, so that was beautiful. But it is still technically looking like it's trying to break out. But when you have yields and the dollar also pushing and small caps under pressure, you just have to be a little bit more defensive and conservative with it. Because obviously any sector, even if it's bullish, if the market is under pressure and seeing net liquidity coming out, it could obviously change the technical picture pretty quickly. And I mean, those sectors and those marijuana charts have a tendency to be looking very, very bullish from one day to another. And then all of a sudden, boom, 1, 10, 15, 20% down day in these names, and the whole chart changes so quickly. So, you know, it's literally a day-to-day basis for the marijuana sector. But as of now, yes, it is looking a little bit more structurally sound to move higher. And you do have that. You still have that the backdrop of the election cycle, right? So there should still be more chatter around legalization. There should be more chatter. All right, guys. So NVIDIA and Microsoft both breaking down. You're seeing Meta under pressure, Amazon under a little pressure, Tesla still remaining firm, Google's still holding up okay, Apple's still just stuck in a sideways range. It's really these two big boys that are doing the selling at the moment. And I still think that there could be a late day flush in the Qs. That would not shock me, just with the weakness in the broad market, the strength in yields. A lot of assets, you know, whenever you see the 10-year up 2.87% in one fell swoop, a lot of stocks have to reprice. And that repricing event typically doesn't just happen over one trading session. It typically takes at least a week to unwind and either sell or buy put hedges or hedge your position somehow. So Qs are now hitting a little bit of support here, trying to backtest this key little pivot trend line that we're watching. So you can see that little trend line goes all the way back to your previous all-time high on the Qs. So we are trying to backtest and hold here. NVIDIA trying to get a bounce. But the fact that Microsoft's back underneath this little breakout zone is a bit of a failed breakout. Bit of a failed breakout. We're seeing more sell side pressure coming into, really it's just NVIDIA at the moment and some semis. NVIDIA and some semis. Microsoft trying to bounce, Apple trying to bounce, Google trying to bounce, Meta, small minor bounce. Tesla's now seeing some selling. But if you're going to play the marijuana sector, I'd give yourself some time on the clock, calls, out of the money calls, and size for loss. So whether it's $1,000 you're prepared to lose, a couple thousand, 500, whatever it is, just size that option play for loss, because typically that will help you get a little bit of a better entry and choose a bit of a better strike price if you size the position for a loss. Final 30 minutes of trading, guys. Microsoft back above its key trend line, trying to push higher here. So Microsoft showing a little bit of signs of positivity, still holding positive gains on the session when NVIDIA, Apple, Tesla are all negative. You can see the Qs are trying to push right back up. Huge stick in Microsoft. I'm seeing Google also potentially trying to curl down a little bit lower. I could see Google falling another 20 cents from this level. intraday today. But again, that one's just been stuck in a bullish range pretty much all day. All right, now you're getting Microsoft trying to firm. It's lifting the Qs, lifting NVIDIA again. Apple trying to push up again. Meta is also creeping. Big push coming back into NVIDIA here. Microsoft, Qs are still trying to hold up. Tesla's still seeing some sellers off this EMA. QQQ still remaining. Still catching a buyer's bid here. Qs are still pushing. Again, NVIDIA did trigger that bearish breakdown, but really hasn't impacted the Qs. Really has not impacted the Qs. You're still seeing Apple trying to firm up, Meta trying to firm up. Microsoft really was the one that did the last little bit of heavy lifting here in this QQQ rally. Microsoft still climbing. Still a little bit of a bearish intraday pattern on NVIDIA. Downside target is around 897.70, so a few more dollars off the price action. But again, Qs are still remaining solid, up 58 cents on the session. 0.13, S&P down slightly. Russell's down quite sharply, about 0.9%. Bitcoin now seeing some sellers. It's had a nice 90 minutes of rally to the upside. There was 9 consecutive 10-minute green candles right into the EMA 113, and you're now seeing rejection. Again, Qs have just been in a range here, a heavy range. Looks like a little bit of a distributive range. A lot of people are seeing this as a bullish range. I'm seeing it more of a distributor. Look at NVIDIA breakdown here, guys. That's a pretty sharp breakdown on NVIDIA. Let's see if it hurts the Qs at all. It's bringing the Qs back below that EMA. So NVIDIA did hit its downside target. Now the question is there going to be more off of that pattern? You know, the way that NVIDIA is actually breaking down right now, you could see it back down to 892 today. Qs are coming in a little bit sharper. So a little bit sharper on the Qs. NVIDIA did satisfy that downside target, but it is looking like it wants a little bit more. NVIDIA is still seeing some sell side pressure. Qs, you can argue the Qs are also triggering a little bit of a head and shoulders intraday, as seen by this little neckline break. That should put us back down to 443.60 on the Qs, so right around this trend line. NVIDIA is trying to firm up. Microsoft's still trying to hold. See, look at this little bit of a bearish wedge forming on NVIDIA. So this is a little bit of a 10-minute bear wedge. You can arguably say you're trying to trigger it right now. The question is are they going to let it trigger? You've got a 1 minute trigger on the 1 minute chart. You're looking for confirmation to the downside though. Alright, so still seeing NVIDIA potentially breaking this little bit of a bear wedge on the 10-minute chart. We got that 10-minute break. We're looking for a candle confirmation to the downside. Let's see. So far we're about to get that 3-minute confirmed candle, but as of now they're trying to hold it. They are trying to hold it. So again, a little bit of a bear pattern on NVIDIA. Let's see if it affects the Qs. I am seeing Meta, Google coming in right now, a little bit sharper. Meta and Google are coming in. Final 20 minutes of trading, guys. 20 minutes of trading. So they broke NVIDIA down here out of this bear wedge, and now we need to look for potentially a 2-minute candle close below this little red bar sell-off. And again, this little bear pattern on NVIDIA, let's just do a quick measured move of where it could take us to. So you're looking at a potential move down to 874. So if NVIDIA were to fall to 874, what would that do to the semiconductor complex, and what would that do to the Qs? So I mean, we're talking about potentially another 2.5% down move. Don't think it'll happen today. It certainly won't happen today, unless you saw some sort of a news-based flush. But just got to be mindful that that pattern has triggered intraday, and now we're going to watch it. And again, they love triggering these bear patterns as they rope people in on puts and shorts, and then they rip it back up. So, but again, you know, what I'm observing is the semiconductors are actually strong across the board, and the Qs are strong, but NVIDIA is weak today. So maybe that pattern does have some sort of validity to it. We'll watch it. Final 20 minutes here, guys. Final 20 minutes. Amazon saw a nice hard down candle. Apple's still stuck in a range. Tesla saw a nice sell-off. Google's coming in now, curling down ever so slightly. Meta just holding that 490 zone, so really nothing crazy on Meta. Still up about 1% on the session. Microsoft still up 0.63 and trying to press its gains higher. You can see NVIDIA trying to press to retrace to this little breakdown zone. Just going to adjust this little wedge channel. QQQ right back up. So just like that, the Q is getting a really big stick back up to the high side on the back of Microsoft pushing. Microsoft's really the one pushing there on that 2-minute candle. Slip to Microsoft's 1-minute chart. You can see Microsoft trying to actually break out of this little bit of a rounding accumulation formation. So Microsoft showing some relative strength, lifting the Qs by the scruff of its neck. NVIDIA is still just lagging here. And just like that, they pumped the Qs right back up. Quite impressive. Quite impressive. Now, it looked like we were breaking down a little bit, and they just ripped it with Microsoft. Still a lot of chop and slop in this region. I mean, look at this tight range. What a range on the Qs. Just really fighting this 10-minute EMA 113. You can see it's been resistance quite a number of times. You tried breaking out once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now the 9th time trying to get above that level. And there just keeps being sellers coming into that same vicinity. As of now, we're above it. We are above it. WBA is at double bottom. Funny you mentioned that ticker. I actually just got an alert on WBA. I did get an alert, so I think we're watching that same double bottom play out. Yeah, potentially a buy. I would let it pierce a little bit more, but you have had some hard down weeks. It's interesting at this range. It's certainly interesting. I see the double bottom trade. I do kind of like it myself, but I'm just trying to see if there's any sort of other level that I like. No, I think you could come all the way back down to this range here. This is the level I like, around 1880. That's the level I would personally look for. Pierce of 19 bucks. Could you get a bounce here? Yeah, you probably could, but I would look for a little bit of a pierce of this level. We're piercing it right now, but I think we can get it a little bit lower. But if you want to take a stab at it here, I have no problems. A lot of support. Interesting. You can see NVIDIA just sitting right on that 20-day moving average. Right on its 20-day. And they are looking to appear to keep the Qs green here. They are NVIDIA retracing to its little breakdown zone. They are trying to press the Qs higher here. We are seeing some heavier flow coming into the Qs now. So the Qs seem to want to stay in this range. They are trying to attempt a little bit of a breakout out of this range here. But Microsoft weakening a touch as NVIDIA pushes. These two stocks are still the heartbeat right now. Meta, Apple seeing some sellers. Tesla seeing some more sellers. NVIDIA, you can see the rejection so far off that little zone. Let's see if it comes down for another round of selling. Alright, so again, NVIDIA just retracing back to this little resistance zone, has triggered a bearish pattern looking for confirmed downside move. Haven't got it yet. Still seeing S&P weak, Russell weak, Qs strong. So a day where capital has flown defensively into tech, has moved defensively into tech. Final 12 minutes of trading here. We are trying to keep the Qs positive, so it seems. Dixie's faded a little bit, but still up sharply on the session, up by about 0.43%. VIX is also faded. The UVIX is only up 0.8% at the moment. Russell 2000 still seeing some more sellers. Volume is starting to increase just a bit, guys. You're seeing Microsoft heavy buy volume coming in. Apple getting a bid. NVIDIA seeing some sellers in this range. So again, huge volume coming in on Microsoft here. Seeing some buy volume coming across the whole QQQ market. Apple getting a nice stick. NVIDIA, look at the stick on Microsoft. Qs are still pressing here. And they are trying to break out of the top end of this range on the Qs. Google's pretty much testing near its highs. Microsoft and NVIDIA seeing a little bit of selling here. Apple still trying to press. Google trying to press. Tesla is just staying sideways. NVIDIA coming in a little bit sharper now. NVIDIA still falling. Going to break and try to confirm this bearish breakdown. Look at NVIDIA sell, guys. NVIDIA is seeing some hard selling at the moment. That's weakening the entire QQQ and the semis. Just like that, NVIDIA is bouncing and the Qs are trying to bounce. Microsoft still remaining firm. Amazon's catching a nice bid. Same thing with Meta, Google, Microsoft, Apple. Really the only one under pressure late in the session here is NVDA. But net Qs are still hovering on the positive side. Still just holding positive gains. Microsoft back at the highs. Both NVIDIA and Microsoft are still trying to press. Microsoft's at the highs again. Google, Apple still holding strength. QQQ going for another surge higher here. Wow, they busted the Qs through that range. They are trying to push it to 445. Big strike zone. Big strike zone on the Qs was just tagged. And they pumped it up through Microsoft, NVIDIA. Big surge in Microsoft there. Whoa, look at that surge. What a rip there on the Qs. So again, they gave the markets a facelift. Can they close the S&P green? It's down by 0.09 cents, 44 cents on the session. They are trying to give it a little bit of a facelift. You can see NVIDIA actually had a nice move back to its wedge pattern. And now trying to break out of this wedge pattern. So a little bit of a bearish breakdown. Wasn't confirmed on the 10-minute chart. And you're back inside this wedge. Final 4 minutes of trading. Make that actually just 3 minutes. Monster push in Tesla, Microsoft, Google, Meta all had a monster push there. And obviously the Qs ended up breaking out of this range that we were chopping in for pretty much all day. So NVIDIA is trying to go green late in the session here. S&P Russell still negative. Microsoft holding firm. Tesla firmed up nicely. It's only down 0.5%. Still have NVIDIA slightly down by about $1.50 on the session. Nothing crazy, but it is negative slightly on the session. A little bit of reversal back in Apple, some sellers stepping into Microsoft, NVDA trying to press here. So again, NVIDIA has been the lagger today in the Qs. NVIDIA has definitely been a lagger with Tesla. We're trying to firm up now. All right, guys, that's the market close. Thank you all for tuning in. I know it was only a little bit of a half stream. So thank you all for tuning in. Definitely, remember, stay ready. I have a lot to discuss today. So I will be working on the daily analysis video. So stay tuned for more research. If you're not a member, definitely check out my tradingcapital.ca Discord. There's a lot of insightful things that are happening in the market at the moment. You know, when you start seeing weakness in S&P 500, weakness in small caps, but strength in the Qs, we've seen this scenario play out before. And there's a lot of moving parts that are potentially unfolding as we progress into this next quarter. So, I mean, quarter two has officially commenced. It is April 1st, so it is a brand new quarter. So lots can unfold as we progress here. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Hassan there. Thank you, Bart. Thanks, Briston. Anybody else who I didn't mention, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the charts a little bit later. Cheers, everybody.